the circumstances of Africa relating to so much that our generation in a season can do right. So much that a generation in a season have the right to find themselves within the season. When I say finding ourselves within the season of our opinion about the circumstances in Africa that look like a situation that some buildings are constructed, but some circumstances are that someone else either in sometimes wants to ignore, or there's really a way that countries can really assist one another, and that humanity can really assist one another with what humanity are being challenged with. They can actually assist countries out, that the generation can find themselves to listen to that. And that is required of mankind. And that is that mankind can find themselves doing. The circumstances that we've mentioned before, that some countries want to work on processes, that they want to look at countries for many generations and for years looking like that and being abused. And for people in nationalities like the African nationality to be abused for many years and generations. But it is an opportunity for humanity to look at the completeness of mankind and at the amazingness of the universe, and to learn to appreciate every part of creation, and to not educate themselves that some people's skin color, is that is not allowed amongst humanity. It is that some people educate a generation to fight the certain nationalities. And when we look at international sports, yes, and I have to mention it because I've watched the sports yesterday, and I have really looked at how the camera angle is and how everyone's opinion is that is in the audience, that gives certain opinions, and how the camera guys that are behind the scenes, that videographies, or however the word is, right, they take the viewers at home, how they really educate something on the television. And I can see on international sports, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of aggression. And if we have the managers that manages those processes not abuse the circumstances of the world to a point where, where the world ends in world war, and where the world ends in further aggression in other generations. We have the opportunity to prevent that. We have the opportunity to prevent world wars and to prevent the circumstances in our generation, to escalate further in other generations. People, I know there's a lot happening in the world, but I really think that international sports is the platform to aggress the world further. I don't really think that the implementation of international sports was that is going to divide humanity. I really have thought all these years that international sport is exactly that brings generations of people together. But when you see how the people in the audience have prepared themselves, right? Some people write on the boards, messages for Ribea, Elise, and the presenters that presents with this is now the color team sitting here, and then the African people is there. And yesterday's sports program that we were watching was international cricket. And they presented it in the same way that the Netherlands and the South African rugby game was now a few weeks ago, right? It is in that same presentation of argumentative and abusiveness to mankind and to countries in general. And I really don't think that's the platform for sports people and for sports managers to abuse the world further. I really think sports was that is going to bring the world together, and that is going to be less abusive to humanity, because the whole meaning, there was a three colored woman sitting there, And the whole education and process of that. And the cameraman was also angling on it. And the cameraman was like, this is colored and that. She first went to the colored people and then she went to the black people after that. And the whole process of how they do and how they present the programs, rather than don't go to the audience, or rather than manage the process beforehand, but don't educate, because exactly what we educate is what will happen in the world. And international sports has got the platform in humanity to educate humanity out of that. That is abuse of to mankind. What do? The camera guys, they angle in on the sports people, and then they first angle in on the colored guys, and all the white guys. Nowadays it's the colored guys first, and then the black guys. And then they take a photo of how the monkey, and the writings about this monkey, and all the what the writings that you can read, right? So they've got a whole lot of things and sayings, and the sports guys now need to do sports in all of those tensions and aggressions. I really do not think that's the platform for countries to find their argument at. It is there that everyone can go and decide to go and argue somewhere else, and not in that brings mankind together, like social media. We said everyone has got free opinion to say what they want to, and they've got free opinion to argue about it. But processes like our international sports specifically need to be managed in ways that are non-abusive to countries, no matter how the argument in the world is. No matter, nowadays they say it's international business owners owns the international sports. And I really don't believe it's ownership. I believe it's a protective requirement for mankind to protect one another by having the sports function being part of mankind, where they can engage with one another and where they cannot oppress one another further, when countries sometimes are finding it challenging with all the differences in mankind itself on earth. And it is those processes that Ribea Elise feels that we can sometimes do right, and that we sometimes do not have to abuse one another. We are enjoying our morning tea, and we are enjoying a nice apple tart, a Nubbly apple tart. Last night I employed Nubbly apple tarts. It's now really not Nubbly, but I used to be employed by Nubbly. And they are bakery factory, right? Manufacturing. And this is now the apple tart. Someone gave the apple tart once, right? And then they bought the brownies last night. And it's interesting, but it was not very nice. And that's the apple tart. It's very, very nice. It's very, very nice. I warmed it now because I think it's nicer warm when it comes fresh out of the oven. But I really think humility can really do a whole lot of stuff, right? And what we have educated about right is not necessarily going to be what's right to someone else. Right is that it is non-abusive to someone else. That's what right is. We had our fashion photo, and people are questioning the fashion industry a lot. We have our Vogue fashion photo where we sit with our leg on that photo post. The Vogue fashion also explains it in a way one another, because they go to the beach and someone is naked in front of them, right? Nowadays, the beach is not the beach only, but people, lifestyle choices are that they want to dress the way that they want to dress, and they can be fine. And men can educate one another that, you know what, we are not against women who's, and that they express the amazingness of the universe in how they're dressing. And for humanity and for women to educate one another, that is fine. And the Vogue business also feels fine educating our opinion on our generation to not teach one another, to oppress one another when someone comes to stand in front of you and they are naked, It is our generation that has to educate one another. Do not feel paranoid by it, but get yourself in that you learn, this is actually, non-abusive reaction. It's actually the amazingness of women, the amazingness of the marriage vow of man and woman, the familyness of the universe, And when women feel fine to present that, then guys should not feel challenged about it. And guys should not feel that, you know what, they should not get scared when they look at it, because there's so much emotion, because we don't educate properly in our generation. And there's so much emotion relating to not educating properly. And we're going to have our relationship talk on Monday. We're having our relationship talk on Monday. We're going to talk on the requirement for the marriage vow of humility to be accepted, and for humility to learn that vow of protection, right? The birthright, and to not now tell yourself that this person in the world has done wrong or has done a crime, and now someone else looks the same like this person, and now the whole world want to chase everyone who looks the same like the person who did the crime. Because the world is structured in a way that everyone is going to look same on one day or the other. And when the world is structured in that way, I have learned that we, our family, I always say we look like the African Americans, right? And our house represents the African Americans a lot. And the Oprah Winfrey-ness of my mama Hannah, you know, my sister Antoinette, what's that? Other models named Antoinette looks like a lot also. And the amazingness of mankind that sometimes gonna look the one like the other person. And then we should educate ourselves. We can't go and chase half of the world down who now also looks the same like that person who maybe has done something different than the other. And that's where the education in our generation needs to be right, and it needs to be protected. Yolanda Adams, Antoinette looks like it was, no, not Yolanda Adams, is a person. A fashion model, yeah, not like Tyra Banks. As a generation, we can educate one another to be fine amongst all the differences of humanity. And then when people are standing in front of one another and someone looks different and someone presents themselves as different, and then people are standing in front of one another, someone looks different, someone presents themselves as different, right? And then someone else would not get paranoid about what is the world gonna say if this person looks different. Because nowadays everyone is paranoid to say that what is the world going to say if this person is different. Some people say there's already so much happening in the world, how can this person look different, you know? And how can this person react different? We have to educate the world out of that they're gonna get frightened of how someone else would react. What we need to educate is that everyone would need to be fine with where we are at, and with that is acceptance amongst humanity. That's where we say the different skin color is not to have been oppressed. To get to a sports tournament and someone tells you that they are in a season where they are abusing a Ribea Elise, and they tell you to cheer the abuse on, and you hear the conversation in your countries, I advise and I opinion people to not go and abuse people on social media pages and or in your communities, because people abuse people without the social media ever being there, because AWOKH business only started on social media with an education in January 2022, but the purpose serving pages was now there already in 2017. And our purpose business of AWOKH and purpose started already in 2017, right? And in 2021, we were now really, when we came from South Africa after 2020, we were now really officially on social media with our AWOKH business. And where we are at in our seasons, when people tell you that they are abusing some people, and these messages go around the world, right? That's only messages that wants to abuse women, right? So those messages goes from country to country, and people on sports teams, you can hear the banners, and then it looks like they're talking business or about Ribea Elise. And then the camera guy, they angled it into countries, right? And because they want countries to harm women in general. And New Zealand and South Africa is like that South Africa is now not played by how women have been abused in the world. South Africa had a lot of women that were prostituted and that were abused and that were kidnapped. So South Africa is constantly in that they sometimes are there in the crowd, but they're sometimes really realizing that, you know what, woman abuse is non-acceptable. And what they do, and New Zealanders are also not cheering that on, because New Zealanders read all of these banners and everyone knows what's happening in the world already. And for some people who really doesn't know, and who are really being told to go and cheer abuse, women abuse on in the world. Nowadays, you watch the sports tournament on television and you view exactly the camera guy angling in on what women on social media are doing, right? And when the communication in the world is like that, everyone sometimes knows, because of the abuse and the prostitution of certain women, they sometimes feel to share in and to have other women also be abused. So when sports, international sports camera angles goes into women, and they share banners, and the camera guy goes to reveal certain things of certain women, then do not cheer it on. And when you realize who the woman is that they're talking about, do not go and cheer the abuse to that woman on, because there's a lot of anger in our generation. And there's a lot of ways of messages, right? There's a lot of ways of messages, and there is a lot of anger in our generation. And what we say is like AWOKH educates. It's not only a photo that they sometimes show, but they are saying so much through the photo. And that's what we learn through our AWOKH fashion education. That we stand and we're not saying a lot, but it's actually saying so much. And that's where we want to be at in our education in season, to really not have women be abused so much, so really not have anyone be abused so much. And in that is everyone else's opinion to be fine in our generation. That's it for where we want to be at and for what we wanted to say for today and for breakfast morning with Ribea. Have an amazing day further.